In the life cycle of a building, people come together to collaborate. At times, there is alignment of interest between collaborators and enduring trust is built. I spoke with two people whose values and brands aligned in the construction of a Brooklyn condominium building, 350 Butler Street. Bill Caleo, a real estate developer and the founder of the Brooklyn Home Company, says, "It comes back to team. It always comes back to team."
This is the way I want to do things, like collaboratively with other artists, with people that are passionate about craft.
And Rachelle Louis, a business development leader at JennAir Appliances who calls herself a slow cooker. Rachelle equates collaboration with love and describes the sales process as the soul of her brand aligning with the soul of others.
I mean, not to be generic about it, but I think people have to connect, right? And to me, even brands have a soul.
I'm Drew Lang, the founder of Brick & Wonder. This is the Brick & Wonder Podcast. Bill, I understand you started your professional career as an actor and a singer, and then you made your way into the world of real estate development, eventually founding the Brooklyn Home Company. How did you make that transition, and how did you think about what you were doing as you started into the real estate world?
Sure. So it's interesting to hear you talk about my last 20 years of turning from an actor into a real estate developer, because it went by so quickly. And acting and real estate development are actually more similar than you would imagine. Because as a real estate developer, we're going through a creative process. And you have to have a stellar team to do it well, just like in acting. And I think that's what I loved about acting, is the teamwork that we had. The cast that we built together, the stage crew, the director, the producers, everybody that came together had to collaborate and be on their A game. And the best shows that I did is when we had the best collaboration and we had open hearts and were transparent and we built the best show that we could. And I essentially repeated that in real estate development. It was all about building the team and the collaboration. And it's unusual to get a creative person like an interior designer in a room with an engineer. They think so differently. But when they want the same things, it's a wonderful collaboration. You watch the fire, and it's a really interesting process. Going back to my childhood, I watched my father and my mother build businesses. And I got to sort of sit in the front row and eat popcorn and watch that. And I think I secretly was fascinated by the building a business process. And I wanted to be an actor, and I was a singer, and I love those things, and I studied to do those things. But I always had in sort of the back of my mind that it could lead to an entrepreneurial career somewhere. And I was living in New York in 2002. I was living in Brooklyn, and I would say to somebody, "Yeah, I just moved to Brooklyn." And they would go, "Why?" Like something bad had happened, like I was in prison. And I was like, "I don't know, I like it there. It's pretty cool. It seems like an up-and-coming place." And that's what happened. I was in the right place at the right time. I got to start developing real estate in 2004 when Brooklyn was a much different place. And there were a lot of homes that needed to be loved and developed. There was a lot of old stock that needed upgrading. The value of a Brooklyn townhouse was about a quarter of what one in Manhattan was. Condos were about half price. And I was like, there's something to that. This place is too nice and it's too close to Manhattan not to get some love eventually. And so in that time, while I knew nothing about developing real estate or New York City bureaucracy or anything, I built my team and we got the pieces in place.
Let's double down on this notion of team. So you had a market point of view, a kind of recognition of the pent-up value in Brooklyn. But you also, it seems, had this, from the get-go, set of values around working with good people, collaborating with people, and that being a key to success. So that's interesting because most people don't come to that until later. So where does that come from?
Yeah, I think the collaboration does come directly from the show that I was doing in the evenings. And in the morning, I'd wake up and be like, I need those type of collaborators when I'm building. And it really came from my sister, who's one of my business partners and our creative director, and her boyfriend at the time, now husband, Fitzhugh, were both finishing their studies at RISD. And the first project I ever developed, which was my own home, they were sleeping on an air mattress in my kitchen for the summer. And I was doing my second project, and I didn't know they would have much interest, even though I knew my sister was talented. She was always painting her apartments and reorganizing furniture. I knew she liked interiors, she liked design, but because they were sort of in the RISD mode and constantly collaborating and workshopping things, they said, well, let's go along with you and we'll meet with the architect and like give you some notes and we'll talk about it. And they both just sort of exploded with excitement about what they thought the new place we were developing could become. And I just sort of sat back and said, wow, I like this energy. I like where they're going. And the culmination of that was my sister sort of redesigning. It was a floor through condominium project, 4 units in a brownstone, redesigning all the layouts. And then Fitzhugh coming on the site with me, and a staircase was being demolitioned out. And he saw all the wood scraps, and he said, what if I took all these wood scraps and I built a barn door in the penthouse apartment that separated the living space from the primary suite? I'll make it 10 foot tall, 400 pounds. I'll dowel it like this. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. So he sat in that living room. We didn't have shops at that time. I bought him a $300 bandsaw at Home Depot. That was his payment for doing it. And he built this signature door that he put up, and it was a showstopper. The customer that came in and bought the house, I honestly believe bought it because of that door, because of my story and telling her about Fitzhugh and how he's a developing artist and he goes to RISD and he came in and he built this with a bandsaw that I bought him. And she was like, yeah, I want this. And I was like, this is the way I want to do things, like collaboratively with other artists, with people that are passionate about craft.
So, Rachelle, I understand you started your professional career in the world of fashion.
Yes, I did.
You did quite well, but you were feeling dissatisfied in some aspects of what you were doing. You were figuring out what was going to be next for you. And you, by happenstance, made your way into the built environment in the world of appliances. You then came together with Whirlpool, specifically the JennAir brand. And as you got to know the brand, you discovered there were aspects of it that were even better than you might imagine. Tell me a little bit about what you found when you first arrived there.
Well, the first thing that you can't avoid noticing is just the aesthetic of the brand, right? You open the fridge, it's a black interior, and your reactions at first is kind of like, what? Did you just go all black inside a refrigerator? But then when you start to see what it looks like and you look at other brands on the market, you almost felt like you loved the shock of it, right? It now changed your perspective on what a fridge should look like, or a range should look like, or a dishwasher with gallery lighting inside. At first, you're like, who needs that? And you're like, I need that. But the other aspect was, all right, this brand has an aesthetic, which definitely grabs your attention. But as you know, and I think everyone else in the world knows, especially going through the pandemic, is it responsible? Is this a company that is thoughtful about the climate, about the community? Because now you can make decisions not only for yourself, but you hope that this brand or this company is working to make the world a better place. And so that was the surprising aspect, was being able to learn more about what Whirlpool as a corporation was doing, that everything was sustainably produced, which was like full circular sustainability, which was a shock because you don't see it when you go on the brand's website. There was this old letter that was written in 1969 from the CEO at that time, where he discussed converting the entire company to be sustainable. And one of the quotes in it says, good deeds should not be flaunted. So all these things that are being done that are so socially responsible, which a lot of companies are sharing, which you should, so people can make those choices. It's like Whirlpool does it, but it's almost like you'd have to go to their corporate site to even see any of it. And some things they don't even publish because it's just what you should do. And so that was the part that really led me to kind of taking the job at JennAir. But when you learn that and you can see the accolades and the awards, for a poll across the globe on what they do socially and environmentally, it was kind of like a no-brainer to come here.
How long have you been with the company?
My first day was March 16, which is the day New York shut down for the pandemic. So I woke up still nervous about my first day of work, even though I was just like walking into another room in my house to log on to a computer screen. But yeah, it was the day New York shut down was my first day. So I had to do everything virtually. So with a new company, I'm still fairly new in this industry. I never really worked with developer side at all. And so now I have to try to create relationships through a Zoom, create relationships with people, which I'm used to being able to create relationships in person, right? I'm a very personal person. I'm a hugger. I'm like, how do you convey authenticity and going to get to know someone about their business and what their projects are, through a camera? But I met Bill Caleo through a camera, thanks to Brick and Wonder.
I have a longtime general contractor. His name is Pete, and he owns a company called iFathom Construction. I met him when he was 27 years old. He wore a baseball cap every day, and he had what I call a chip on his shoulder. He had something to prove, and I like people like that. I like people that have something that they want to show the world, and he brought like another dimension to our business about quality control, waterproofing, all those important things that are the most difficult to do. He sort of brought that in. And then we collaborated with an architect named Ilya Vilnitz. Same thing. Chip on his shoulder, was a licensed architect, I think when he was 25, 26 years old. I met him on Craigslist. We met for a beer one night, and I hired him the next day. You just felt it. You felt he had something to give and something to prove. And luckily, those two guys are still with me today. And it's matriculated from there. We've got 7, 8, 9 other people that are in the same vein of those two. We're a family. We still are a family, and we built the thing together.
So right now we're sitting in the penthouse at one of your recent projects, 350 Butler. When you came to thinking through what to do with the kitchen here, you were introduced to Rachelle Louis, who works with JennAir Appliances. There are lots of appliance companies out there. You've done many projects with many appliance companies. Why JennAir, and why Rachelle as a partner? What led you to ultimately deciding to work together with her on this project?
I have talked to a lot of different appliance suppliers with always the goal of, let's collaborate. I can give you a lot of my business. I'm not a huge developer where I'm building skyscrapers, but I've got 3 smaller buildings, and I can give you scale. But in return, I need a good customer experience, I need technical expertise, and I need products that my customers are going to like. And what I liked about Rachelle was that she had a chip on her shoulder too. She had something to prove and believe that her product was better than the competitors, and showed me why she thought that, and then gave us demos and brought our team in. She wasn't this person that was just trying to make a sale. She was trying to make a partnership.
Bill, I just told him actually today that they gave me my first shot. It's the first developer project that I won working for JennAir.
What are some of the ways that you connected with Bill and his team in relation to what you and JennAir bring to buildings like his?
So Gio, my boss, he calls me the slow cooker. Because for me, I love to build a relationship with someone, get to know them, have an event, have dinner, bring your team. And it's almost like you get to the point that you come to the conclusion on your own that we like what we see, we want to work together, we want to be a partner. And so with Bill, we did the virtual meeting. His team came to our showroom, and our executive team happened to be in town as well. So it was perfect. So the head of JennAir was there, walking them around. And so I kind of let them come to the conclusion that we love this, right? I don't want to be the one to push it. You have to feel like, yes, we do. I might push you just for the meeting, but then once it happens and you meet us and you see the product, from there it comes from you to be like, we want to work together. We want to do this.
What happens when this notion of working with people towards a vision, towards a goal, mixes with aspects of commerce? Money is exchanged on these projects, which happens as a matter of course. Does the relationship change? How do you manage that? Talk to me a little bit about the notion of collaboration where it meets aspects of transaction.
I feel like I hate the word transaction because it sounds so vapid, as if it was the only thing you were angling for.
I think that collaboration when it comes to suppliers, subcontractors, is really one of the most important parts of our business. I don't like reinventing the wheel. I like using tried and true systems that I know are going to be reliable. I want to have subcontractors that are going to come back and fix and repair and also understand the way we want things done. Because the first time we're all figuring it out, the next time it's a little better. By the third time, they get it. We have to communicate less and we can build quicker and more efficiently. And it's the same thing with our suppliers and our furniture collaborators. Once we get into the groove is where the magic starts to happen. I think about it as dancing. I was just talking to somebody about this. When you first start dancing with a new partner, you step on each other's toes all the time. That's not a bad thing. There's two people that are dancing. They're doing their best. They want to be good, but it's impossible. You're going to step on toes. When you watch a couple that's been dancing for 10 years, it's the most beautiful thing on earth. The collaboration and the way they move, it's in sync. So we believe in that. We believe we need our subs to be on our projects consistently. If they make a mistake the first or second time, I try not to blame them. I try to look within myself. How do we stop stepping on each other's toes?
I like the metaphor.
I mean, not to be generic about it, but I think people have to connect, right? And even though you look at product and it's like this inanimate object, to me, even brands have a soul. So does my brand kind of connect with the soul of what you do, right? And your product or what you're putting out? Do they make a perfect matching? Because you want it to feel authentic, not just beautiful. And so with Bill, even going to their site and reading what they do and their approach, still having everything look beautiful and bright and happy. Because a lot of times when you think the future or modern or all electric, everything looks so modern, cold, square, dark usually. And they were doing it with this approach where it's just beautifully designed and it's bright and there's these brass accents and beautiful details and everything. So I like the juxtapose of yes, we're passive house and we're thoughtful in the environment, but you can't even, people think you're skimping on something, right? And here's this, it's sustainable. It must be made out of hemp or something. It's just the thought that goes into people's, there's such a psychological barrier you have to break. And I'm like, you're doing projects that they're so thoughtful and they look this gorgeous. And we're making product that is authentic material and sustainably produced and it looks this gorgeous, So it's aesthetics and values align, makes it an even better partnership. But I think also just meeting each other as humans, even through video and forming that connection, then you really want to work for each other, right? You're I really like Bill, I love Stacy, you love the team, And so you want to do everything you can to work with them. And so they push the transaction part, not me.
I love that. So speaking of the benefits, I know the value of building sustainably runs high among your values. Was that an important factor in your selection of JennAir? How did that play into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Energy Star is a very important, that's sort of the stamp of approval on an appliance. We're focusing on sustainability and lowering our carbon footprint in our buildings. Now, we're not perfect at it. To be perfect when you're building a building of this size is quite difficult because there's air leakage on the envelope, and you want to shore that up and make sure that there's no leaks. When you're doing a 3-story house and you can look at every moment, it's a little bit easier than a big building like this. But we are committed to the techniques to limit air leakage and to have continuous insulation. We are committed to buying the right windows that are triple paned. We are committed to putting ERVs in our buildings so you're constantly having filtered fresh air. We're doing all of those steps. To be honest, before COVID, people kind of looked at me funny when I said we're going to invest in this. And then during COVID and post-COVID, people say, yeah, I want good indoor air quality. It seems to make sense. We wanted to make that the best amenity. Yes, you could have a great refrigerator, and it's important to have a good-looking one, have it built in, have it look streamlined. But what's more important than the health of your family? So us leaning into that is probably what I'm most prideful of, and something that I think we've done well.
When I was in the fashion industry, I worked from high-end brands all the way to Hanes, to streetwear, to skate brands, and across the world. So launching brands in Middle East and in Vietnam and Singapore and so forth. When you start to be more conscious about the environment, which my consciousness actually came from my 9-year-old nephew at that time, because I was taking him bowling, and he has what we call in the family like imprinted brain. He reads something, he remembers it. And so he came across a video of all the cities that are going to be underwater by the time he gets to, I think, like 89. And he lists everything very methodically, like, oh, Tishasha. And he starts just listing all these cities across the globe. And I just thought, they always say that, what we're doing is affecting the next generation. And in that moment, I felt it, And so it's not like one person. Like, sometimes you think, like, what can I do to change anything? But in your own small world, you can make different choices. I started composting. Fashion industry has a lot of waste. They're one of the worst polluters, And there was a lot of other reasons why I wanted to get out of fashion, but that ended up becoming a bigger reason. And I need to transition. You're going from a space where everything now is about fast fashion. Either it's super high-end or it's fast fashion. So much waste. And when I started in the industry, it wasn't like that. Brands told stories. People were connected to brands. They were loyal. They would wait for you to have a new collection every 4 months. Now it's like every week has to be new things out, Creates so much product, so much waste. Where in this environment, you build something to last. We test refrigerators to last for 20 years. It's completely different opposite from a shirt that's going to last you 20 days.
It's extremely important, I think, when somebody walks into a space, to recognize the brand names, because it makes them feel like it's not a generic apartment, that we have partnerships, that these brands in here are actually our collaborators and our friends. We did this as a team. It comes back to team, always. We did this as a group. We are all behind this home that we just built for you. Our customers come to us, and this is the biggest investment they've made in their lives. It's the most important investment. And their kids and their family are going to be sleeping in the bedrooms in these homes. So I try to just internalize that every day. And by having partners, it makes people feel more comfortable, that they can rely on the home and on the systems, because they're going to live here a long time and they need it to last. So we really do think about that, and we really promote it in the marketing materials, not just because I want to make a sale, but because we think it makes our customers feel more comfortable. It comes back to collaboration, communication. When you're building something, there's a lot of parts, there's a lot of pieces. It can always be better. We can always communicate better. We could always build a better set of plans. We could always communicate better on construction administration in the field to help people along. I'll probably spend the next 50 years of my life trying to be better at that.
If there were one thing you could change about our industry, what would you change?
I would want the industry to be more open to trying something new. I think for a lot of people in this industry, they don't have a choice now, because New York is putting in place Local Law 97 and Climate Mobilization Act. They're going to force you to try different products and work with different vendors who can make your projects more sustainable, more climate friendly, cleaner to breathe in, But I think there was a lot of, this is what everyone's comfortable with, and they can just repeat it in every job. And so it just became like automation, right? And so I would love for more people in the industry, which a lot of them are, to kind of question, well, maybe we should try something new here, particularly appliances, because I work in appliances, but I'm sure there's other areas as well. Or you mix things up, right? You don't have to do one brand for every single project. And I think people, consumer-wise, are more open than you think, because every time they open a refrigerator, I hear the gasp. And then they want it. So they don't know what they want until they see it. So you got to put in the projects for them to see it, right?
So if people want to learn more about JennAir, where can they go online to find more about you, your team, and the JennAir brand?
We have an amazing website. We have a really great team. It's based out in Benton Harbor, Michigan, but we have an amazing website and we have a showroom in the A&D building in New York.
Okay, so people can make appointments
or
to go to that
walk
showroom?
in.
Or just walk in?
Yeah, the
Okay.
building's actually, even though it's a trade building, it's still open. So even clients walk in all the time.
So we'll be sure to put those details in the show notes as well as the JennAir website. Since we're making plugs, let's talk before we close about your new book that just published. Tell me a little bit about that, why you decided to publish a book and what the story is that you're telling there.
So we almost have been in business in Brownstone, Brooklyn for 20 years, almost. And we've got a lot of imagery over the years of the traditional Brooklyn brownstone, enough to fill up a book. And so we were talking to some people that we know, and they suggested that we go and talk to a couple publishers. We did, and Abrams Publishing said, we want to do your book. We think it's perfect for the Renaissance of Brooklyn and celebrating the Brooklyn brownstone. And we think there'll be an audience for it. And so let's write a book together.
So people really do need to know your story. I think when the history books are written about Brooklyn in the future, the Brooklyn Home Company for sure is going to be a big part of that story. How, if people want to know more about you, can they find more about you?
You could go to our website or Instagram, thebrooklynhomecompany.com. And for you to say that, I mean, I just got chills. I can't imagine that being a part of the history books, but I really, as Warren Buffett says, it's not just about a business, but it's the business you choose. You have to pick the right business. You could be a good business person. Those skills are important, but you also have to be on the right train, going down the right track. And I got to catch Brooklyn from 2002 to 2024, which has been one of the greatest renaissances in any community in this country in a long time. So if I am a part of that, I mean, it's just because I was in the right place at the right time.
You came into some good luck, but Brooklyn's lucky to have you. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Drew.
And thank you for creating Brick and Wonder.
Thank you for being part of it. That was Bill Caleo of the Brooklyn Home Company and Rachelle Louis of JennAir Appliances. After meeting and working together, Rachelle brought a product request made by Bill to the JennAir product team. The requested product, a freestanding range with integrated convection cooktop, is now designed, in production, and will soon be available on the market. Thank you so much for joining us. This episode was produced by the team at Radio Kismet, including Christopher Plant, Ben Giese, Cameron Starr, and Justin Berger. The production and editing staff also included Brick and Wonder team members Ed Thompson, Zoe Metcalf-Claw, and Carrie Potter. I'm Drew Lang, and you've been listening to the Brick and Wonder podcast.